The Jake Asman Show will begin shortly. Thanks to all these great Patreon members who help support the show. Get your super chats ready. Jake will be here in just a moment. If you love the New York Jets, this is the place to be. And now, the Jake Asman Show.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. There's a Jet bombshell involving Woody Johnson, Darren Mougey, and Aaron Glenn. We'll break that one down. And for today, I'm Jake Asman on St. Patty's Day. It's the Jake Asman Show. Let's hit it and get it started.
Wish you could have been a Jet, Fernando.
Let's see what happens.
What's your message to the Jet fans in New York?
Jets, Jets.
A new chapter for the Jets has started. Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey are tasked with shaping the future of this franchise. Will they be the ones to finally get it right? We will be here for every step of the journey on the Jake Asman Show, breaking down all the storylines, every game, and everything in between. Please subscribe and hit the like button below. Super chats, baby. Cut the line. The Jake Asman Show starts right now.
Here we go, Jet fans. Welcome in, everybody. Hit the like button and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We're presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Shout out to anyone who listens to this show on Apple or Spotify. February was the most listened to month in the history of the Jake Asman Show. So this channel is exploding in the Jets offseason. And a big thank you to everyone who listens on Spotify or Apple at the start of our show. Speaking of listening, coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern today, I'm filling in for Michael Kay on ESPN New York. So tune in from 1 to 3. We certainly will talk some Jets, talk about the World Baseball Classic Championship game tonight, preview the NCAA tournament. Former Auburn head coach and current CBS Sports basketball analyst Bruce Pearl is among my guests that will be joining me today. So 1 to 3 on the ESPN New York YouTube channel or listen on 880 ESPN New York. With that, we say hello to a good friend of the show. He's all over the Jets in the NFL draft for you Stadium. It's our pal, Omari Brown, who joins us now. Omari, always good to get you on. Thanks for hopping on today.
Thanks for having me on, Jake. Listen, man, it's looking like it might be a weekly thing, guys. So, from your lips to the football god's ears, man, let's do it.
Let's go. So we start with some comments by Mike Francesa, of all people. Mike on his podcast yesterday saying that he spoke with a source that has given him plenty of accurate information in regards to the Jets in the past. I'll just play the full thing. Now, this is the full thing that I edited down from a 9-minute rant segment. This is about 3 minutes, but I think it's worth the time. I did my best to try and encapsulate all the things that actually mattered here. Here's Mike Francesa, again on his podcast, talking about the power dynamics inside the New York Jets organization.
I have some information that just came to me because I bumped into someone that I have a high regard for and that I know knows the situation. And I found out a couple of things that I was very surprised by that I'll share with you. And I'm sure this, the Jets will either deny this or, have a problem with it. There was a lot. First of all, sometime we know how bad Glenn was last year. I mean, look at what he did with the staff. Look at what the staff is now. Look at what the product was last year. I mean, Aaron Glenn had a nightmare. If he had been fired, no one would have blinked an eye. He's still here. Somewhere along the way, Woody Johnson gave Mougey the power. It's no longer, if you notice, Aaron Glenn came in. First of all, he wanted to bring in his own GM. Woody was against it. He didn't think the person was experienced enough, and then they went out and got Mougey. Okay? So they were going to do this together. But Glenn was clearly, when they started this last year, the voice and the power of the whole thing. And you can see now, if you're paying attention, that has shifted dramatically. Mougey's now in charge. And clearly, my understanding is Woody made a decision that Mougey's in charge. So now Glenn, it's not equal. Mougey's the guy and Glenn's the coach. But Mougey's kind of making the decisions. My understanding also is while these guys have put up a very good front, they're not getting along as well as everybody thinks they are. Is also what I'm hearing, which I'm sure they'll deny, but that's what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing it from a terrific source. Okay. The bottom line is, this doesn't mean, it does mean that Glenn better put forth a lot better performance, or he's going to get booted out the door and Frank Reich will get named the head coach. I mean, that you can see a mile away because Mougey's now in charge. It's not even. Mougey's making the decisions. That's number one. Also, I felt that Glenn was very quiet about Geno Smith. I thought that was surprising. It's been sold that it's this big tandem, buddy-buddy tandem. I'm hearing it's not so buddy-buddy. And you know what? Here's what I say about it. If Mougey's in charge, let him come out and be in charge. Don't hide it. Don't pin everything on Aaron Glenn. If Aaron Glenn is just the coach and he's not making any personnel decisions, let's know that. Let's see where we are right now as we can go forward and put the praise and the blame where it belongs going forward.
So that's from Mike's podcast yesterday. And let me say this. This is going to be spun into some sort of bad thing. I don't believe it should be. First off, I believe Mike. I don't think he's just making this up. I don't think all aspects of what he said there were true or the timeline's accurate. For example, when they made the move to hire Glenn, originally they were going to pair Glenn with Lance Newmark. And the story goes, Glenn didn't want Newmark. He preferred Mougey. So they made the pivot and got Darren Mougey. So let's, I think, establish that. But the idea that all that is false, I don't buy that for a second. I think, Omari, when you go back and look at how year one went for Glenn, it was an unmitigated disaster. Then at the end of the season, Rich Cimini reported Woody Johnson was pissed with how the year ended. He was pissed that the Jets were a national embarrassment. Oh, but Jake, they're tanking. They lost games at the end of the year, their last 5, breaking NFL records of ineptitude. They didn't have an interception through 17 games, a record that will stand as long as football is being played in this country. It was that bad. So then you factor in the end of season presser where it looked like Glenn had his tail tucked between his legs and Mougey took on more of an authoritative role in that presser, saying that, oh no, we're going to be competitive and respectable right away. You also just look at the body language. Then I highlighted it on the show at the time. None of this surprises me. Then we fast forward to the Combine press conference, and Darren Mougey was mentioned by Glenn as someone who helped pick Aaron Glenn's staff. Glenn noted that. So then you combine all that, Mougey saying, I'm not surprised Glenn is calling the defense. Francesa said also in this segment, I didn't cut that part specifically, that the Wink Martindale stuff, it was Mougey saying, Aaron, you should just call the defense, which I also think makes a lot of sense. But I say all that to say this to me is not a bad thing. And if this is true, and I believe a lot of that is, I think this is one of the better decisions Woody Johnson has actually made in a while. You could just tell things feel different. You could tell the way the media is covering Darren Mougey that clearly they have an idea that these two are not attached at the hip. I had Rich Cimini on my show 2 weeks ago when he said Glenn is not Mougey's sidekick. There is a real scenario where Mougey is here and Glenn is not. Glenn went 3-14 in year one. He fired both his coordinators. He replaced 10 of 21 assistants. He feels like he's been completely neutered. It's just you call the defense. He was looking for a head coach of the offense, which is why they got Reich. And I think it's clear Mougey is way more involved in the decision-making. He's still trying to help Glenn. He's not trying to sabotage him. He got him players in free agency that Glenn could work with for his defense. But I believe a lot of that. I don't think that Glenn and Mougey are on equal footing. I don't think Glenn is the power controller now because he was so bad in year one, whereas Mougey set the franchise up for success. And even working along the margins, a lot of his moves have worked out and people are encouraged by them. So none of this surprises me. And I think it's true. And if it is true, I commend Woody Johnson on recognizing this because he actually might have a good GM. Don't lose that guy and don't attach him to Aaron Glenn if Glenn's in over his head and Mougey actually could be here post Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, Jake, listen, I'm right on with you. I think that this one thing I will applaud this current regime for is their ability to pivot. I think that once they realized they came in, they said, hey, listen, we have a good base here. Let's try to win with these guys that are already here. We're inheriting an all-pro in Sauce Gardner. We're inheriting an all-pro in Quincy Williams, and we're inheriting an all-pro in Quinnen Williams. Once they saw that, hey, listen, mentally, these guys, this is probably not going to be the soldiers that we win the war with. They were able to pivot. We don't have to talk about the trades. They were really good trades. They were able to get a Godfather offer from the Colts. They did really well, and Mougey had the foresight to get a 2027 first from the Cowboys. I think that this is a great thing, and I think that this pivot by Woody Johnson is a good thing, because guess what? You have to earn the right to be able to have your independence. Just like we had to earn our rights when our parents started letting us stay out past our curfew and things like that. You have to earn the right. And guess what, Jake? When you break that trust, as Aaron Glenn broke with Woody Johnson, we're going to have to reel you in. So now you can't go and you make all these decisions. You can't drive the family car after 9 o'clock because you don't know how to act. So now we have to reel you in. Darren Mougey, since he's started, Jake, has made 11 player trades. He's only second to one man, and we hold this man in high regard, Howie Roseman. All right, you look at the trades that he's brought in this year, everything by Darren Mougey, and I tweeted this out yesterday. He's moving like a man that needs to separate himself, okay? He came in, look, with less than the hoopla than Aaron Glenn, obviously. He came in, he signed our core guys to great team-friendly deals. Then he was able to move those guys. So I just think that his foresight, everything that Darren Mougey's done up to this point, minus playing it really safe in the draft, has been to separate himself. And then this offseason, I think that he's done a phenomenal job. You talk about the Jermaine Johnson for T'Vondre Sweat. You talk about the Minkah Fitzpatrick deal. You talk about the Geno Smith trade, and now ultimately with this Justin Fields trade, just being able to get anything from Justin Fields, just being able to get any value and save money, and then also get a 2027 sixth rounder. Yeah, Darren Mougey should be in charge from what we're seeing right now, because guess what? He's the adult in the room, because he's not at the podium giving bulletin board material. He's not at the podium, basically saying things that can get memed up by you and I. So I think Darren Mougey,
he's not asleep at the combine.
He's not asleep at the combine. He's awake for everybody, even though he did wake up for David Bailey. So I know a lot of people are happy for that. But again, I think that I'm never going to be the one that shoots the Jets bail because they don't deserve it. But I think that they absolutely deserve for the way that they've been operating this offseason. And I think what Darren Mougey's doing, and I think he's doing two things at once. He's showing that he has the acumen of a modern GM to navigate the landscape and to build a good team and win on the margins, which is one of my mantras for the offseason, Jake. He's been doing that. And then he's also minimizing all the potential excuses that Aaron Glenn and most of his supporters have. So you couldn't stop the run. We brought you guys that are going to stop the run. There was leadership questions and communication issues at the linebacker position and the back end. You got that. We didn't get any interceptions last year. We set records for all the wrong reasons last year. We got Nashawn Wright, who had 5 interceptions. We brought in Dane Belton. Okay, so now we revamped that safety room, and this is your calling. This is what you were drafted to do. This is what you were good at. So now there's no excuses. The offense is going to do what the offense is going to do, and I think we're going to fill that out. And throughout this process, we can talk about the draft. But defensively, if this is your superpower, you should be able to be a top half. You shouldn't rank lower than 17th with this cast, assuming that we add a couple more pieces and chess pieces for you to play with.
That's well said and spot on, because here's the thing, right? I have no issue with Glenn calling the defense, learning from his mistakes. You hope he does. But I think what this tells you is the Jets recognize that Mougey to this point has done his job better than Glenn's. And why are we giving Aaron Glenn full autonomy over the organization when he looked like he was in over his head as just a head coach in year one? Give him less responsibility. Let him be the head coach of the team. Let Mougey, who has shown competency, handle the personnel. And it's not like, this is Izek and Rex, where Izek was thinking about the long-term and getting rid of Rex and bringing in his own coach. I don't think Mougey's doing that. I think Mougey, to your point, has said, AG, what do you need to be successful as the head coach of the defense, the play caller on defense? And they got him a bunch of guys that know Aaron Glenn, that came here because of that relationship with Glenn. So I think they're, to your point, doing two things at once. They're not sacrificing their future in 2027 and beyond, and they're going to give Aaron Glenn a fair chance to prove he could be the head coach, which, again, when they hired him, beyond the fact he had never been a head coach before, and that concerned me with any candidate the Jets were going to give this job to, the fact that he had all the power when he had never been a GM either. That to me never made any sense. So I like the fact that they recognize, look, maybe it was too much on Glenn's plate in year one. Let Mougey handle the personnel. Let him have the final say. Aaron, you worry about coaching the team, fix the defense. You hired Frank Reich. He's your guy for the offense. And let's see how it looks. So I don't think this is a bad thing. People are like, oh, hey, here we go again. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think for those who want to believe in Aaron Glenn, he has a better chance to be successful the way the Jets structure is now set up than if it was going into the year where, Glenn had to sink or swim for his future. Then he's going to be all in and make irrational moves that don't help the Jets big picture. And that's where Mougey could step in and say, whoa, we're not taking Ty Simpson at 16. That doesn't align with our future. Whoa. We're not going to trade away a bunch of future picks to get an aging veteran. We're not going to make the DJ Moore move that the Bills made when they think they're a player away. We're going to be smart and calculated with our contracts and trades. We're not going to do anything that's going to hurt our long-term future. If this is true, and I believe it is, the Jets are better set up going forward than they were under the old setup with Glenn being the czar of football for the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're going to have a czar of football, bring somebody in to solely be the czar of football. And me personally, Jake, I think that it should be head coach reports to the GM reports to the VP of football operations if you want to do that. And then that VP reports to the owner. I think there needs to be checks and balances. I just think that there needs to be order, because that's how chaos happens. When everyone thinks that they have a say and everyone thinks that their way is the right way. There needs to be one voice. Well, obviously Woody Johnson is the boss and he signs his checks. But in terms of, the direction of the franchise, I think that should be one person with a collective input from everyone else. I don't think that there should be, four sous chefs in the kitchen, because then I don't think anything is going to get done. So I absolutely love this. And I think that Glenn is absolutely, and I think we talked about this last time, he's not just coaching for his job, he's coaching for his career. And so is Darren Mougey, because we talked about it yesterday. Not many GMs get second opportunities. If you mess up, basically running $1 billion entity, you don't get that trust again. I would have to look. Not too many GMs get second chances. And I know coaches get second chances, but Hugh Jackson hasn't been a head coach in the NFL after being historically bad. He had to go to college. So Aaron Glenn is not only coaching for, his job and his livelihood, he's coaching for his career and what people and how he's going to be viewed by this fan base and by his peers. So I think that this is his best way. This is his best route to keeping this job and turning this thing around. Because it would be a great story if a former first round pick could turn this around. We want to get amped up. We want to get fired up for this. You think we all want to be bashing somebody that probably should be in the Ring of Honor? No, we don't want to do this. But we also are tired of seeing horrible football. We are one of the worst franchises right now in North American sports, not just the NFL, North American sports. And I think that it's time that the tide changes and that narrative changes as well too. And I think, with the way, and you listen, I applaud those guys. I respect what the beat does. That is not an easy job. But even you can see that, I think that some of them are having trouble breaking some news. And I think that that's a great thing, that there's no leaks. And I think the reason that I think there's two reasons that Wink Martindale wasn't right for the job. Number one, he's too friendly with the beat. And I don't need any of my coordinators being too friendly in the beat or trying to send messages through the media. I just don't think that that's good. And I think that successful organizations don't do that. And number two, Aaron Glenn is getting paid $12 million. So if we're paying you $12 million, why do we have to pay, let's call it another $4 million for Wink Martindale to call plays just so you can be the CEO when we tried that already? So like I said, I applaud them being able to pivot in real time.
I think that's really well said. Comments, questions, super chats will cut the line this morning. In Asmaniac Madness, we have the 3 versus 14 inside the Dangerous Alliance region. Mad Max and James B will square off. Ladies and gentlemen, Australian Jet fan picked up the win during the afternoon show, an upset over Philly Noodles. So who will play the Australian Jet fan? Will it be Mad Max? Will it be James B? Ladies and gentlemen, right now, your vote determines the winner. Asmaniac Madness is underway. Vote, vote, vote. And since we're doing 2 shows today, I'll be doing the second show when I get off radio after I fill in from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York. Here's the raffle prize that we're going to make possible for one lucky Asmaniac. Vinny T. People are trying to manifest Geno Smith to give us the Vinny Testaverde 98 season. I'd settle for the 2015 Ryan Fitzpatrick season, but a Vinny Testaverde signed jersey is up for grabs today for anyone who enters the Asmaniac raffle. When you enter for the Vinny jersey, you also are entered for a signed helmet by one of Vinny's former teammates, Hall of Famer Curtis Martin, and a signed Garrett Wilson jersey. Shout out to Rasta Dread, who is the first to enter the raffle on our show today. He gifted 1 membership, which means he is in the raffle for 1. Doc Jet fan with a super chat. He cuts the line. Mougey has revamped the roster without knee-jerk, save my job signings. He's been surgical on the margins. I'm so impressed so far. Hashtag Moo Genius. Doc, I agree with you. And here's the big thing, though. I don't want to just, completely glaze Darren Mougey the whole time and just say, well, he's perfect and everything bad is Aaron Glenn. Ultimately, I think Mougey's done a good job so far. But the biggest decisions that he will have to make, they haven't happened yet. He has set the Jets up beautifully to have a chance to finally get it right and turn it around. But the Jets are going to be judged by the next 2 drafts, if you really think about it, Omari. They set themselves up with 5 first-round picks over the next 2 years. Beyond that, if you count second-round picks, they have 8 premium assets, first and second-round picks, over the next 2 drafts. It starts at pick 2. It starts with the 4 total picks this year in the top 44. Obviously, how they're positioned to take their big swing at quarterback in all likelihood in 2027 will determine Darren Mougey. As much praise as Jet fans are giving him, and I think some of it is certainly deserved, let's remember Joe Douglas was beloved as well. He got rid of Gase, got to pick Salah. All the vibes with JD were super high. He had this historic 2022 draft class. And ultimately, because he got the head coach hire wrong, and the biggest thing, he got the quarterback decision with Zach Wilson not just wrong, but historically wrong. The Jets are still feeling the effects of all that. So ultimately, while Mougey has done a nice job so far, let's not lose sight of the fact, Jet fans, he is going to be judged by the big decisions he makes in these drafts over the next 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think GMs are defined by 2 things: who they ultimately pick at the quarterback, and how they build a roster, or maybe 3 things, and who they decide to be their head coach. And listen, I loved Joe Douglas. I love the way Joe Douglas operated, especially after that first draft, because that first draft was hard. It was COVID. He was coming on late in the draft cycle, didn't really have all the scouts in. So he went for the high ceilings and he failed. So then he course corrected, and I thought that he did much better in 2021. And then in 2022, we already know what happened. GMs, Darren Mougey is going to be defined. He's not going to be defined by the Jermaine Johnson for T'Vondre Sweat trade. He's not going to be defined for the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade or the Geno Smith trade. He's going to be defined by who he ultimately selects to be the quarterback going forward. And that's most likely going to happen next year. So, Jake, I agree with everything you said. But one thing, I think the draft for the Jets starts at 16, because at 2, we already know that it's going to be one of the edge rushers. I think that, I think FanDuel has it at -240. That is going to be Arvell Reese. Shout out to Frankie V. Sorry, brother. It's probably going to be Arvell. But yeah, so, and then it starts at 16. What I want to
get that pick right, though, Omari. Like, again,
they do.
We feel like it's going to be we feel like it's going to be Reese, but Bailey ends up being a stud. We're not going to be like, well, the betting favorite was Reese, and they did with the betting favorite. They got to be right with that decision.
That's true. They still have to hit it, but I'm just talking in terms of what we think. Where we're going to really see how Mougey is going to treat this draft, it starts at 16. And I would even say, Jake, that it starts at 6 and 7, because if Carnell Tate goes 4th or 5th, I want Darren Mougey to be on those phones, because Mekhi Lemon and Jordan Tyson are not going to make it to 16 if Carnell Tate goes 4th, 5th, or even 6th. So I'm looking at Washington at 7. They pick at 7. They pick again at 7 at 71. I'm sure that they want to grab a second round if they could. So let's package 44 and 16 and move up to 7. Maybe throw in the DJ Reed comp pick that you got. That's roughly, I believe it's 140. The comp pick for came out last week, so it's 140. Let's be aggressive. Let's move up. People feel that this is a weaker draft, and the real meat and potatoes of the draft is going to be in rounds 3 and 4. But if you can get 2 immediate contributors, so if I told you that the Jets walked away with an edge rusher a number 2 receiver, and we'll call it a tight end or a safety. Wouldn't you be okay with that? 3 day 1 contributors, and we didn't have to sit back and then mess around and take wide receiver 7 at 16. I think that he should not play it safe. And I think that he's earned enough goodwill from this draft cycle for us to say, okay, maybe we were trying to come away with 4 premium picks, but we did get 2 or 3 immediate contributors. And I think that the way that they've gone about this thing, the Dylan Parham signing, they brought back Max Mitchell, they brought back Xavier Newman. I think that you can take your swings early in this draft because there's not as many blue chip prospects, and then just start to create that talent funnel in some of those positions. Like, start the talent funnel for safety because Minkah Fitzpatrick is about to be 30. You definitely have to start the linebacker talent funnel because Demario Davis is probably only going to be here for 1 year, and you want him to kind of groom the next guy that's going to have those green dot responsibilities. So I definitely want to see him be a little bit more aggressive, maneuver around, and just show that acumen that you've shown in the trade market. So I think that you're absolutely right. He has to knock it out of the park because right now, everyone loves him because everyone is out on Glenn. But the chair can get hot really quick if you start messing around and not really maximizing on the potential of this draft capital that you've acquired.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, this is similar to the Gase-Douglas dynamic. Now, I don't think it's going to be, the same way where Mike McCagnon ultimately got fired after the draft. I don't think we're going to deal with any sort of crazy firing with Glenn post-draft or any sort of thing. But if you think about it, Gase got Douglas the job. Ultimately, Douglas fired Gase because the Jets were horrible, and Douglas got to pick his coach, and it wasn't the right decision. And Robert Saleh, ultimately, we'll see how he does second time around. But we could be looking at a spot where if Mougey does well in this draft, but the Jets don't win a ton of games, and their win total is around 5.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook, and we are presented by FanDuel, and here's your latest look at the Jet over-under. It is set at 5.5. If let's say they win 4 games, 5 games, there's that real path where Mougey will not only get a chance to have another offseason, but he's going to pick a coach. And at that point, it will all be on him. And if they still don't win, then his feet are held to the fire. But I think what is clear, and if the Francesa report is accurate, Woody believes in Mougey more than he believes in Glenn. He's still not going to fire Glenn because he likes him personally, I believe. But clearly, there's some real heat on Aaron Glenn. And I think Mougey, trying to help Aaron Glenn, is obviously going to try and get him players that fit what he needs. But now in the draft, that's where you're taking the bigger picture look at things. And that's where you need Mougey to be we're not taking David Bailey, who might help us more immediately because he's a more ready pass rusher. No, we might take Arvell Reese because he's only 20 and he's going to develop into a superstar. That's where the idea of having Mougey oversee the big long-term decisions, I feel better about it than if it was just Aaron Glenn trying to make all these moves to save his job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the moves that they've made kind of set the stage for an Arvell Reese because he's 20 years old. We don't want him to come in and be the savior. I don't need him to be honest, Jake, I don't need him to be Micah Parsons. Whatever your ceiling is for Arvell Reese, I don't need him to be Micah Parsons. I don't need him to be Will Anderson. I don't need him to be Myles Garrett. I don't need him to be that day one. You know what I need him to be? I need him to be a young, developing chess piece that is going to hunt favorable matchups. So now that the edges are there, you got Joseph Ossai, you got Kingsley Enagbare, and you still have Will McDonald, who I think is going to be better because he's not going to be asked to play, 75% of the snaps and, trying to set the edge against elite tackles. I think that that's going to help everybody. So now I think collectively they have enough pass rush juice to where sub package, you could have Demario Davis and you could have Arvell Reese playing off ball. You already know who's in our division, Jake. We got 2 unicorns in our division, and Josh Allen, and maybe he hasn't evolved into a full unicorn, but he's on his way. Maybe he's not Charizard yet. He's Charmeleon. Drake May. He's on his way up. For my Pokemon fans out there. So he's evolving into that final stage. But again, you need somebody that's going to be able to hunt those guys. How many times has it been 3rd and 8 or even 3rd and long, and the pass rush doesn't get there, the pockets collapse, those guys take off, and now they just extended another drive? You're not going to be able to do that anymore because we're going to be able to show Arvell Reese in the A gap, and then he can show, and then he can just spy. And then I got my money on Reese getting to the edge or to catch Josh Allen or to catch Drake May. So I think that that's going to allow Arvell Reese to slowly develop. And that's what I truly want to see. I'm tired of drafting guys and then asking them to be the guy day one. That doesn't always happen, no matter where they're picked. I really want this front office to really focus on developing, and not just developing the players, developing the coaches as well too. I thought they did a great job bringing in Chris Banjo. First year on the job, he did phenomenal. I think Tanner would have had more success had he had somebody like Frank Reich to show him the ropes or to, kind of help him with install. So just from a franchise standpoint, I want them all to just start developing players better. Draft some guys with a plan. Draft a day 3 linebacker that has elite traits, but really hasn't put it all together mentally. Pair him up with a DeMario Davis. Now you have David Onyemata. So now he can kind of put Devondre Sweat under his wing. Minka Fitzpatrick can tell those guys, hey, listen, these guys, I have a book on these guys, and this is what they like to do. This is how they always try to attack me. So I think that they didn't do that last year. That's why it always shocked me that they never brought in a veteran. Usually, remember when Rex came in, he brought in Marcus Douglas, he brought in Jim Leonard, he brought in Bart Scott. Yep. You have to bring in your guys. Even Saleh always brings in his guys. Look, he got the band back together in Tennessee, and we're making fun of him, but he knows that he has to hit the ground running. And now he has a quarterback this time, so he doesn't really have any excuses. So now there's no excuses. So now we expect more. And the standards need to remain high until they prove to us that they're worthy of being in this position.
I think that's really well said. Hit the like button if you're just tuning in. Omari Brown from U Stadium is our guest. If you tuned in late, a signed Vinny Testaverde jersey is on the line today. Matt Shaw with a super chat. He's in the raffle for 2. If Glenn gets fired, I suggest a new coach get some public relations training before starting. Or how about this for a concept, Matt? They either hire an offensive guy for their quarterback or someone who is proven, so they're not stepping in to the hardest job in sports, you could argue, being the head coach of the Jets, given the playoff drought that you naturally just inherit, even if you had nothing to do with it. They need one or the other, but I hope Glenn figures it out. We could cross that bridge when we get there. But again, getting back to what we opened the show with, it does feel like this idea that, Glenn and Mougey, they sink or swim together. They still might. If Mougey has a terrible draft, they might just say, let's blow the whole thing up, bring in someone new for a 3 firsts and 27. But I lean with Mougey being here and Glenn not being here if they have a bad season. I think it's easier. And we've seen this around the league. Ryan Poles survived in Chicago through multiple coaches. Somehow, Joe Shane, he might not have any power anymore, but he survived with the Giants through multiple coaches. Typically, Joe Douglas, who didn't even get hired by Gase, got hired by Gase. He got to fire Gase and pick his coach. Typically, the GM does get to survive. It's very rare. You have a John Izek situation where Izek gets fired after just 2 years on the job.
Yeah, it's extremely rare. And I think that, I just think that there's a higher chance of Darren Mougey lasting through this than it is Aaron Glenn, because you can always go back and say, hey, listen, I didn't even get a chance to even pick my QB. Like we had to go with Justin Fields, and now we're going with Geno Smith. So it's just been bridge after bridge. So he's definitely gonna get the benefit of the doubt, and he deserves the benefit of the doubt because what Glenn put on paper and on tape wasn't great. And one thing I will say, Jake, a lot of people say that Glenn needs public relations training or they don't want him to be brash. If that's, I don't know Glenn personally. I don't know if you do, but I don't know Aaron Glenn personally. If that's how you feel, I want you to show up authentically as yourself. And I said this in the space earlier before hopping on with you. Shout out to the commute. I want you to be authentically yourself. Me, I'm a under promise, over deliver type of person. So I'm always going to under promise and then do my best to over deliver. So I'm never going to, attract unwanted attention to myself. But if that's how you operate, that's how you operate. Now, I thought Dan Campbell was a clown when he got up there and talked about biting off kneecaps and, and making sure that, we kick and scratch and things like that. But again, it looked silly in year 1, but now we're in year 5 of Dan Campbell. And it's like, okay, that team matches his intensity. So if that's how Aaron Glenn truly feels, now you have to start backing it up, because now, you just kind of look like a clown to the media and to the fans. But I do want him to authentically be himself. So if that's how he feels, that's how I want you to feel. But now I just want the team to echo your sentiments, because the way he acted and the way his football team played, it just didn't line up.
I'll tell you what, I just like the fact that, we're in a spot where there's no excuse for Glenn. He's been given personnel he needs to run his defense. he is running his defense. We can't say we're running the Wilkes defense anymore. He's got a legitimate bridge quarterback who can complete a pass, so the owner can't use that as an excuse when Glenn was the biggest advocate for Fields being signed in the first place. He has an experienced offensive coordinator. At the end of the day, it's can you coach or not? And he has it's not a perfect roster, but they're about to infuse 4 picks in the top 44 into it. They have enough talent where you could properly evaluate the head coach. And for those saying you couldn't at the end of the year, all right, I'd say they started 0-7 and looked absolutely inept when they had a more talented roster at that time, and it didn't work. Now, put up or shut up, we see what Aaron Glenn could do. Sam Aiken with a super chat. He joins the raffle for 2. Mougey walks on water. He screwed the back end of last year's draft. O-line's weakened. He bought us 3 wins at best in free agency. What do you see in this dude? He and Glenn should be tied together. A couple things. Mougey's not perfect. And I've said that how they handled day 3 of the draft last year, they need to learn from that because they just lit picks on fire, right? Most notably, Arian Smith, who people thought was a UDFA or a 7th rounder. They took him in the 4th round, and this head coach is scolding the media after he had a few nice plays in a training camp practice about him. So they need to clearly be better on day 3. Let's see if Mougey has learned from that. But really, since the end of training camp to now, what moves can you really be critical of from a Mougey perspective? The trades they made for Phillips and Briggs were outstanding. The Brownlee deal, just to show people how Mougey's really good at assets, he trades a 6th to get Jarvis Brownlee. He gets a 7th back in that deal. He takes the 7th and trades it to the Dolphins to get Minka Fitzpatrick. He's made top trades as far as maximizing value with Sauce for 2 1s and A.D. Mitchell being put into that deal. He got the better of the Cowboys or Packers first-round pick in the Quinnen deal in 27 in a much better draft to go with a second-round pick this year. It'd be very tough to be critical of most of Mougey's moves, so he doesn't walk on water. Again, the biggest decisions he has to make are in these drafts over the next 2 years, but I think if you're a Jet fan, it's okay to be encouraged and feel like you might have someone competent running the show. And I don't want to just lose that guy if Glenn proves he's not a head coach and this team is terrible. And we feel like, wait a second, do we really need to blow the whole thing up? If we have a guy who's had 2 good drafts, let's say, and has shown the ability to be able to maximize his resources and put together the best personnel possible, given the fact no one wants to come play for the Jets right now. So he's had to be creative with ways to get talent into the building.
So listen, first off, Sam, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for listening in, man. Mougey does not walk on water. And, Jake's been objectively critical of him and me. I bashed Mougey for the way he handled the draft because last year, Jake, everyone that we trust said that this was a D-line rich draft. Yep. This was the best position of this draft. It's one of I think it was the most D-line rich draft of the last 5 years or something like that, that I was reading. And he didn't take a defensive lineman. And they needed defensive linemen. They needed a run stopper. They needed that run stopper, that plug and play 0 technique, 0-1 technique since Al Woods got hurt and he didn't replace it. So, but again, we talked about their ability to pivot earlier in the show. So their ability to pivot, he realized, hey, listen, I might've messed up and I didn't get the value or the players that we should have gotten. And I thought that the Arian Smith pick was a knee jerk because they allowed Buffalo to take Deion Walker over them. I think that they were going Deion Walker and then Buffalo jumped them and then they had to pivot and they weren't really ready for that. So I give everyone a pass. Douglas took Mekhi Becton over Tristan Wirfs and Jedrick Wills. And listen, guys make mistake with your first year. You maybe don't have all your scouts. Maybe you're not trusting them. So he played it safe. He went with good locker room guys. He went with guys with high floors. He went with guys with, NFL pedigree. Like you look at Mason Taylor, he's the son of a Hall of Famer. He's the nephew of a Hall of Famer. You look at AZ Thomas, his brother is in the NFL. So you look at Malachi Moore, he's a great locker room guy. So they were trying to surround, they played it safe and tried to get some high character guys. So I think that it's okay to say that he needs to get better. But we can also appreciate how he's moved. Like Jake just called it out there. He made 11 trades. And Jake, I'll put this back on you. Has he really lost the trade yet?
I don't think we could sit here and say he has. I mean, ultimately, we'll determine the success of the Sauce and Quinnen deals based on what they turn the picks into. But as far as just the principle of the deal, did you get great value for the premium asset you dealt? I think without question, you'd have to say yes.
Yeah, so it's okay. Listen, we understand that we're not in the best shape, but it's okay to be excited about these small moves that they make on the margins. You know, I tell people all the time, listen, we have an entire fall, hopefully not this fall, to be miserable. So when we do get these small wins, let's just enjoy them. You know, let's just enjoy them in the fan base. I understand that there's people out there that want to tank. I understand there's people out there that are completely out on Glenn, but it's not a prerequisite of being a Jets fan to be miserable. We get it. We get it. We're all living it. We're all living it. Guys, I'm almost 40. The last time the team was good, people were buying me shots because I was turning 21. I don't even drink anymore. And that's how long it's been. So we understand it. But guys, we do not have to be miserable any day. You know, if you want to make being a Jets fan your identity, go right ahead. But you don't have to make misery a part of it as well, too. So if our GM is making some shrewd moves and making some good moves, let's clap it up and let's move on. You don't have to say that anybody is, wearing green goggles or we're drinking the green Kool-Aid today just because it's St. Patty's Day. But it's okay. It's okay. I know there's LOL Jets right now, but it's okay to be excited if your GM is making good moves, guys. It's fine. This is how other fan bases live.
You got to be positive when you can be positive, because you're right. It's been tough. I think that's well said.
Trust me.
Hey, we're giving away a Vinny T jersey today on the show. Appreciate all the $10 super chats. I want to get to those, but I do want to give Omari some love here, because from one Omari to another, Omari 1230 says Omari to Omari. Welcome to the show. We also have some kind words here from the Doc. Doc Jeff says Omari is an outstanding listen. More, please. I agree. Omari Brown from U Stadium is our guest. If you're watching the show for the first time, make sure you like the video and make sure you are subscribed to the channel and tune in today. I'm on the radio at 1 o'clock Eastern, which is why we started earlier in the 9 a.m. hour, 1 to 3 on ESPN New York. How about this super chat here from the big fellow? We need to evaluate what Mougey does in future drafts, but we also can't dismiss what he did in this past draft. Membu's a stud. He's off to a great start. Love our young talent. Trust in Mougey. Yeah, and look, Glenn should get credit for the Armand pick as well. It's not just all the good moves are Mougey and all the bad moves are Glenn. But again, now going forward, if Mougey has a strong draft and they don't win a ton of games, there is that real scenario where Mougey's picking the coach. We don't have to pretend like this is just a made-up fabrication. It's not. I felt that way for a while, and I believe what Mike is saying in his report that we played at the beginning of the show. Mike has been spot on with a lot of things he said over the years. I don't think he's just making it up out of thin air. That's just not how that works. So let's see how they do. But again, and you've been all over this, Omari, 4 picks in the top 44. This is an opportunity to set your franchise up with premium talent. And if you don't go quarterback this year, you're set to add that quarterback next year to a team that is much better positioned to surround the quarterback with the opportunity to actually have success.
Yeah, it's actually cool that you said that. Thanks, big fella. Thanks for listening in, and thanks for the super chat, guys. Keep coming so you can skip the line. So yes, we're going to evaluate what Mougey does in the future, but let's break it down. So listen, we all feel that it's a home run with Membu. I think that Membu should have actually got some Offensive Player of the Year votes, and I think that linemen should actually start getting that too, because especially as a tackle, what they're asked to do weekly. Because most teams have 2 really good edges, and sometimes they have a third. You look at Pittsburgh, they have TJ Watt, Highsmith, and then they also have Herbig. So you don't get a week off in the NFL, left or right side. So I think Membu was a home run. He played it safe with Mason Taylor. And I would say, am I the biggest Mason Taylor fan? Right now, I think Mason Taylor is more of a tight end too. But could we truly evaluate what Mason Taylor is with how that offense was running last year? No. A.Z. Thomas came in and he battled. He looked good against that dynamic duo in Cincinnati. Now, granted, Joe Burrow wasn't there, but I thought that he acquitted himself pretty well. Malachi Moore was able to make over $1 million in play incentives because he played a ton of snaps and he looked well. Now, I think that he's best served as a safety 3, but that's still a ton of experience. Now, if we compare Robert Saleh's first year to Aaron Glenn's first year, I thought that Saleh did a good job with guys like Bryce Hall, with JFM, with Brandon Eccles, and Bryce Huff. Those are the guys that Saleh developed. And if we can, and it's tough, but we have to search. But if you look for, and even outside of the special teams unit, what Jerron Briggs was able to do, his interior pass rushing skills, I think that should be applauded. Yeah, Malachi Moore, I think that he developed pretty well. You have a starter. And I think that if you look at, and the last one, Jarvis Brownlee. I don't think many people knew who Jarvis Brownlee was, but he came in, that defense started to look a little differently. So I think that Glenn did do a decent job of developing the in-house talent. And I think that we can't listen. We can objectively grade Mougey for what he did and still be, excited about what he's going to do. So I think that it's very hard, and you have to look. We got to comb through it with a microscope. But there were some guys that took some steps up, and I actually think Joe Tippmann basically solidified himself as a top half of the league guard. I think that we're gonna see Joe Tippmann even take a further leap, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they extend him at some point in training camp, because I think he's a good soldier, and now that play is starting to live up to his draft position.
Tyrone Garcia checks in. Thanks for the super chat, Tyrone. This is a better situation for both a first-time head coach being the overall decision maker over the GM. Was very stupid now. It's correct. Glenn coach, Mougey the boss. Maybe Glenn can learn how to be a coach. Again, if you want to see Aaron Glenn succeed, anyone thinking that this is not the best way for that to happen, I'd love to talk with you why you'd feel the opposite. Because, again, him being worried about coaching the team, fixing the defense, trusting Frank Reich to coordinate the offense, that's the best path. Let Mougey handle the personnel moves. He's shown some competency and an ability there. So I think that's the best chance for the Jets to succeed. If it's now set up where Glenn is reporting the Mougey, and I believe that is true, then the Jets have a better chance to actually figure it out with this current regime. And if not, if the coach is not here, then Darren Mougey's got contacts with plenty of good coaches around the league. His college roommate was Kevin O'Connell. He was in Denver with Davis Webb, who might be like the Clint Kubiak of next year's cycle now that he's play calling for the Saints and Bo Nix this year. Sean Payton, who's one of the best in the league at offensive play calling, stepped down so he didn't lose Davis Webb. What does that tell you? So we'll see, but I feel much better about the setup of the organization going forward. Danger Zone says, happy St. Patrick's Day, Jake. What does AG do well? Well, I'll give Glenn credit. Seemingly, he was able to recruit some defensive players that still want to play for him. Now, they knew him as an assistant, not a head coach, but what does he do well as a head coach? Nothing on the field we could point to at this point. What has he done well this offseason? He didn't miss a second of the combine. He was awake. I'm just kidding. I think has positioned the Jets to at least have a competent defense if play calling actually is his superpower. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's going to be few and far between trying to find, positive superlatives for Aaron Glenn. I would say that the one thing he does do well, he provides bulletin board material for other teams and for content creators like Jake and myself. So he does that well. You can always count on him for a headline. So that's what he does well. But in terms of what Aaron Glenn does well, I would say he's a motivator. But in terms of X's and O's, in terms of, being a head coach, there's not much that I can give you with Aaron Glenn because we didn't, as Jake alluded to, we didn't see that much. So I think that Aaron Glenn, and I think this is a lot, well, fans are frustrated for a whole myriad of reasons, but I think this is why they're upset, because it was year one. We had an historically bad year and we still have questions about the coach. So it's not what you want going through a 17-game season, basically tanking, being outscored by a historic margin, and then you still don't know what you have in your head coach. So, Danger Zone, when you ask people what AG does well, it's going to be hard for them to give you a real answer of what you're looking for. So I think it's fair to say how you feel about him is right.
Mike Dems in the raffle for 2. Feel like this is Mougey's first real offseason with the amount of power Glenn came in with. Hard to say how much input Mougey had last offseason. We're going to say time will tell. They certainly have taken a much different approach where a year ago they didn't want to sign anyone above 30. This year, that is not the case. They took like the upside swing at quarterback and Fields a year ago. Now they're going with Geno Smith, who is your true definition of a one-year bridge starter. So totally different. They now have way more assets to infuse the roster with. So again, we all like a lot of the moves Mougey has made, but I will keep saying this. He will be ultimately judged on these drafts. So if he's here for 27, it means he did a good job in 26 with the draft class. So let's see what happens in April. And speaking of the draft, we're having a draft party, baby. Come on down to Pittsburgh. McFadden's, the place to be. Free draft party for all Asmaniacs.
Draft Day 2026 live from Pittsburgh. Jets Nation on the clock. Gangrene take Fat McFadden's day and night draft party hosted by the Jay Gasner Show.
Thursday, April 23rd, doors open at noon.
Let's go! Yeah!
Free party, just RSVP with the link in the description. This one is from Jay Petito, who says, where can I buy your hat? Go Jets. This is a New Era hat, Jay Petito. So go on the New Era website and maybe they have it there. I'll hit the Jet chant for you.
Jets, 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 Jets.
The Ty Simpson Jet chant. Mel Kiper mocking Ty to the Jets today. I'll talk more about that later on in the afternoon. Derek, the Kansas Jet fan, says, Jake and Omari, you guys are awesome. Testaverde was my first Jets jersey as a kid. Toss me in for one, kind sir, and go Jets, baby. Who was your favorite Jet quarterback growing up, Omari? Were you a Chad guy, Sanchez, Vinny?
Listen, Chad was my guy. Chad was my guy, man. Towards the end, when he started getting hurt, I was heartbroken. So, yeah, Chad, Curtis Martin got me into the Jets. So yeah, because my dad isn't from this country, so he didn't really football to him is soccer. So I just kind of, Curtis Martin was able to dupe me and get me to fall in love with this team. And now I'm just, eternally hurt by it. So I blame Curtis Martin for all of my heartache as a football fan. But yeah, Chad was my QB. Who was yours?
Yeah, Chad was the first quarterback. First jersey I ever had was the Pennington. I did love Sanchez, though. I was a true Sanchez truther before that was a term back in the day. That was definitely my guy. So I'm right there with you, though, man. No doubt. Slamming in Sammy Joe. Will the Jets be a 3-4 defensive? So Reese is perfect. Yeah, I mean, that their plan is to be a 3-4. You don't bring in Tavondre Sweat to not be a 3-4 defense. And I think you agree with Robbie Sabo and Joe Blewett and many of my guests I have on the show. You think Arvell Reese Omari should be their pick at number 2?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're going to be a base, and I don't want people to get too beholden to the 3-4-4-3 because they're going to be in a lot of sub packages. Even though I know that it's decreasing now, I believe the league was over 50% in nickel still last year, and now offenses are starting to mitigate that. You're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, so that's 12 personnel for anybody that doesn't know is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and then we even saw the Rams experiment with some 13 personnel, so 1 running back and 3 tight ends. So that can kind of that can kind of combat sitting in nickel and being able to run the ball. But yeah, you're definitely going to get some 3-4 looks, but then you're also going to get some 4-2-5 looks. You're going to get some 3-3-5. You're going to get some 5-2 looks as well too. So I think bringing in all of these versatile pieces, just like Enigbari, he's going to be able to play, quote unquote edge in the 3-4. But then even on passing situations, you're going to be able to kick him into a 4-eye. So that's, in between the guard and the tackle. And you can create some four-man looks. But Carl Dunbar specializes in odd fronts, so those are 3-man fronts. So we're going to see a lot of three-man fronts too. With that 4th guy, you're not knowing where that 4th guy or 5th guy is going to come from. So I think that we're going to see a lot of pressure. For some reason, I just think that Aaron Glenn is going to blitz a lot more this year, and I think that you're going to see the Jets. I felt like last year, Jake, and once I make this point, I feel like the offense dictated to the defense a lot last year. And I think one thing I loved about Rex always dictated the game. Sometimes Belichick would get the better of him, but I really would like to see a defense that isn't bend, don't break. I really want to see some more aggressive defenses, big physical guys. I just want to see guys afraid to come across the middle. I want to see guys not being able to just, gash off a 30-yard run right up the middle. So I wouldn't get too caught up in the 3-4 because I do think that it's going to be more multiple than anything. And that's why they're bringing in a lot of these collection of guys that do a couple things differently.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think you're spot on because the league is just different now. You don't just stay in a base defense the whole time. You can't. These guys are you see these guys. We're talking about Davis Webb and Sean McVay. These guys are way too smart now. And they, every week they're throwing in a wrinkle, and, the game plan from week to week is completely different. So that's why I'm just in favor of really having a ton of horses that you could be physical and just set the tone. I don't even know what the identity of this team is. If I ask you what's the identity of the Glenn Jets, what would you say? Tanking. Losing. Right? Yeah, losing. Exactly. Yeah, they're tankers. So we don't even know what the identity is going to be. And I think that if you want to have a head coach and you want to match his personality, let's be physical. I don't care. Blitz 45% of the time if you have to, because you got these big corners that can play press,
that can play press trail coverage, or they can play some cover 3, or even they could play some man. I just think that we didn't do a good job of, and I know Wilkes' system is more of a read and react, but we just didn't do a good job of setting the tone. I feel like every team, we started every game at a disadvantage. So I would definitely like to see them come out week 1 just punch people in the mouth. Even if you lose, I just want people to say, okay, that team plays hard. That solid year, they weren't good. I think they played the most rookies, probably close to in NFL history. I think they set a record for rookie snaps played. So, but they played hard, and that's what they would, kind of known for. So this year you got more talent, but I want to see the intensity ratcheted up.
Amen. Omari checks in. Vinny Testaverde, Santa Monica High School legend. Count me in. I know it's still early, but how many wins do you see this season? I think 7 or 8 is definitely doable. It's doable if the head coach dramatically improves. I don't think you're asking for that much. This team with Saleh a couple of years ago won 7 games with Zach Wilson as its quarterback multiple times. So I don't think you're crazy, Omari. It's just right now tough to picture them doing that because of my reservations with the head coach of the team. Their win totals at 5.5 on FanDuel. I think that's fair. I think they're probably about a 5 or a 6 win team at this point. We'll see what they do in the draft and how they look over the summer. And it's all about sometimes when you play teams, injuries happen. We understand that. But the schedule, at least on paper, it's brutal, man. You look at some of the opponents they got to play. It is tough to point to a lot of games on the Jets schedule and go, yep, they're going to win. Like, how many games, as I pull up the schedule here, do you think the Jets have an advantage in the quarterback coach battle, like the head-to-head, and that's so much what determines who wins games. But, I mean, it's just – I think they could beat Cleveland at home. I think they could beat the Raiders at home. Let's say they split with Miami. So I found you 3 wins right there. The road schedule, I mean, could they beat Tennessee and Arizona? Let's say they do. Okay, there's 5 wins. Where are the other wins coming from exactly?
I mean, you gotta see when you play Mahomes, if he's going to be fresh. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because I think in the head coaching and QB department, you're going to be at a disadvantage in most of these games except for Arizona. Tennessee could be a wash. Miami is doing the ethical tank thing. Rookie head coach, rookie QB. And maybe Monken, because I don't even know who their QB is going to be. Is Deshaun Watson going to play some football in the big year of 2026, or is that a Shador thing carrying them to 2027? And we already know what Buffalo does, and Sean Payton. There's no competition there. So yeah, you're right. It's hard to find a win, but we already know that on any given Sunday you can win or lose. We've seen crazy things happen because the Jets were favored, to win 13 or 14 of those games in year 2 of Aaron Rodgers, and yep. They only won 7 games. So things can change really quickly. And we really don't know who are the pretenders and who are the contenders until that first quarter of the season is over.
No,
so you can sneak up on teams if you catch them early.
Correct. You don't know, and things happen. But if you just look at the schedule, there's a reason why the win total is set at 5.5, because Vegas did exactly what we just did. They looked at the schedule. How many games are the Jets going to be a favorite in? Okay, they'll probably win a game they're not supposed to. Just naturally, you look at the list here. I could probably, best case scenario, maybe come up with 6 wins. Let's say they split Miami. They win the games against Arizona. They win the game against Tennessee. They win at home against the Raiders and the Browns. Can they find one more surprise win we're not thinking of? Maybe they sweep Miami, or maybe they get a team resting in week 18. It's like it's kind of tough, man. Yeah. It just is. Like, that's just kind of the outlook. But things change. Look, things change quickly. And if Geno's a lot better than people realize, that's where you could overachieve. Or if Glenn truly is a mastermind defensively and the offense is competent with Geno, that's how you could be a lot better than people expect.
Absolutely. I think some people that really want to jump out the window. Listen, let's put the green goggles on. St. Patty's Day. All right. Let's say Glenn gets his guy at pick 2. The edge rusher is a lockdown guy. He's an ass kicker. They get, a safety, whatever, however you guys want to do it. All right. The Glenn is coaching up a top half of the league defense. Let's say that they're 14th. And let's say that Geno Smith is a top 20 QB, and Garrett Wilson, they're spamming him targets, and they get a wide receiver 2 in there. we could sneak out some games. We've always played Buffalo tough. A good pass rush rattles Josh Allen. Maybe we take one of the Buffalo games. Maybe you take one of the New England games. I always feel that divisional games, when the teams are closely matched, it can sway either way. I think it's usually like the home and home thing. Maybe he gets juiced up and the guys really want him to get that win against Detroit. Justin Herbert, he can be rattled. Caleb Williams, he'll give up the ball a little bit, but we have to see some semblance. It has to look functional. It has to look like a modern NFL team for us to do that. But one thing, if you do give Geno time, he's going to throw that ball up. So whether we like it or not, and we talked about this last time, how, the losing, when you start getting into the tanking conversation, it's not just a 2027 thing. We're talking about 2028 before the team is really good again. So that's why I think the best option for them right now is to show some improvement, win a couple games, and then start to, make this a desirable destination again. So Aaron Glenn doesn't have to go and pretty much beg people to come here and beg his friend to be the OC and beg some guys that are in their mid-30s to come here and turn things around. So I think the floor should be competency. And I know some people don't want to hear that because, they wanted the hot shot OC in here and they see what they're doing. But you got to remember, man, this is a buzzsaw. Jake does a show every day about this team and the team isn't good. This is a complete buzzsaw, and I think that it's a unique situation for a lot of people. So instead of us, just praying for some guys that probably don't want to come here anyway, I think that we should try to hope that they could be competent. And and if that fails, guess what? We're right in the same spot that we're used to being in.
And I think what people forget, how we root as fans is no impact on what happens on the field.
Yeah, and that's why I tell people all the time, man. Maybe we'll collab and get some shirts. Fan it how you want to fan. If you want to tank, be the tank commander. If you want to be optimistic, be the most optimistic fan out there. If you want to just be objective and just wait and see, take that approach. The beauty of it is that there's no right or wrong way to fan, I feel, because we're all entitled to our opinions. But at the end of the day, we're not employed by the Jets. I'm not the GM. Jake isn't the VP of football operations, but we're going to give our takes. And most of the time, our takes are going to be right. So
I've said it, man. If you had fans run the Jets draft the last 15 years and just draft based on the consensus board, we'd be in a way better shape than what the Jets have been.
Absolutely. We'd be much better on paper if they just allowed the fans to vote. If they just did, hey, who do you think we should get, A, B, C, or D? We probably would have had a couple of pros. And I think the reason that Jets fans have become so good at the draft process because this is our Super Bowl.
Right.
These are our playoffs. This is our Super Bowl. And draft night, we get pissed off because we know that this is where we get our wins because they're few and far between during the fall.
Omari, great to catch up. Appreciate you hopping on, and I'll reach out to you and we'll get you on again next week. All right.
Appreciate you guys. Listen, man, like, comment, subscribe, man. Jake does a great job. Thanks for having me on, Jake. Follow me at Omari Brown 2 Eyes on Twitter, and make sure you follow U Stadium as well too, because we're always putting out NFL content and draft analysis. So thanks again for your time. And Asmaniacs, man, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the support.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great Omari Brown. Make sure you guys follow him. He does an awesome job. Rational, level-headed, funny dude. Awesome insight there from Omari. I don't have a ton of time today because I'm doing some radio, which is why we bumped up the start time for the show. But load up your calls. If you're just tuning in, want to get your thoughts on Mike Francesa's report on the power dynamics inside the Jet organization. But let's update a little Asmaniac Madness right now. Yesterday, Australian Jet fan with an upset, the 11 seed, knocking out a 6 seed. So he's advanced to the round of 32 inside the Dangerous Alliance region. Right now, it's Mad Max and James B squaring off. And as I take a look at the scoreboard, it is Mad Max off to a strong start in voting this morning. 68-32. Mad Max is currently leading James B. This afternoon on the show, 4 p.m. Eastern hour, Luppy and Johnny Boy, the 7 versus 10, will go head-to-head. So that is what we have coming up. So keep that in mind as well. Comments, questions, your super chats, always cut the line. Again, going to take your calls, want to get into all that and certainly much more. Going to take a very short break. And then on the other side, we come back with your calls to wrap up our show. Hit it.
Look at those burgers, big fella.
Are you grilling in your attic?
Yeah, I'm grilling. I got this right now.
Are you sure you should be cooking in the attic?
I did it 20 years ago for a party.
20 years ago.
Yo, Beast, please, man. Are you using propane inside?
It's one of my inside grills. Got some steaks right here. We're gonna.
Don't forget to season your meat.
I'm carrying this with me too.
Let me see your grill, man. What does your grill look like? Is there flames?
It's a Maverick.
Wait, is that flames? You got the window open, right?
All you gotta do is use your head, not your asshole. Ding ding. If you want some spices, come get the bullshit.
You have smoke detectors in the house, in the attic?
Already under control.
Look at that chin.
I might have the Jay Leno chin, but I'm the sexiest thing in the world.
I will check back in with Beast after he burns down his attic. Oh boy, Beast's place is on fire. Look at that. Look at that. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's all bullshit. Whoever made that is a goddamn moron.
Beast, is this you with meat sweats?
Are you that stupid? Really? I got enough problems to worry about having to put lidocaine patches on because I'm screaming and yelling. Look at this. Art imitates life.
This is something.
Duh.
Gator has received Beast mail saying, "You hungry for burger or steak?"
Take a look at both. Fantastic. Use your head, not your ass.
I'm confused. Is he cooking in his attic?
Global Studio headquarters.
That's like 6 pounds of meat, dude. You can't be eating all that.
I'm going to take the fat off.
Here's the chat summary. Viewers in the chat are saying they are entertained by the streamer cooking a large amount of food, including burgers and steak inside a bedroom. Just another day on a Jet YouTube show.
I got gas right now.
Hey, I never thought in a million years that when we sent Beast those spices, that he was going to cook in his attic with it. We were sweating. We were thinking there's definitely going to be a fire of some kind. I should have known Beast is a professional global enforcer, and he had everything under control.
Take a look at these. Look at the seasoning. Look at that right there. What does everybody... Can I say something here, please? And now, let's return to the Jake Asman Show. Thank you very much.
Bimbo boomy, bimbo 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 bop, bimbo bop, bimbo bop, bimbo boomy, bimbo 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 bop.
And we're back. All right, let's get to your outstanding calls right now. But first, let's get caught up on your super chats. Appreciate everyone tuned in. If you just arrived, Vinny Testaverde autographed jersey is the raffle prize. I have a question for the Asmaniac community as well. So far, I have purchased 2 raffle prizes this week for our weekly raffle on Friday. Curtis Martin signed helmet, Garrett Wilson signed jersey. Give me a player you'd like to see a signed item be for the third prize in the weekly raffle. All right, I'm open for some suggestions. We've done Jet Legends. It could be a current Jet, and I'll see if there's any memorabilia that exists online, but I got 2 prizes. Typically, I do between 3 and 5 prizes. So what should the third prize be in our weekly raffle series? Bino with a super chat. When do they add another veteran QB? The plan cannot be Geno and a rookie. I think based on my conversation yesterday with Zach Rosenblatt, they don't think they're in a big rush. Maybe they're waiting for Andy Dalton to be cut by the Panthers. Why trade a pick if you can get him for nothing? Maybe they want Carson Wentz, but Wentz doesn't want them if he could go somewhere else. So maybe they're waiting to see what his market actually is. They're going to add another QB. Maybe they're trying to make a deal for Will Levis or Spencer Rattler if they want to add a QB with some potential for an upside. That would be my preference, by the way. Like, what does Andy Dalton really do in the year 2026 for the Jets? Like, if Geno gets hurt or Geno's ineffective, wouldn't you rather just give Will Levis a shot? And Will Levis, I don't think is good either. I'm not a believer in him. But I'd rather watch Will Levis play than a 38-year-old, right? Honestly, I'm not sitting here telling you guys Will Levis is awesome or Rattler's awesome. I'm not Gary trying to tell you Rattler's great. But I'd rather watch those guys play than a guy we already know. Like, maybe Will Levis plays like Malik Willis, for all we know, ironically. I'd rather take a chance on someone with some upside. Sam with a super chat. Why not sign a receiver that could help Geno and Wilson right away? Is if Wilson's out, we have another hard season, ? Sam, thanks for the super chat. Got you down on the raffle again for another 2 entries. They need to add another receiver. They're going to do it in the draft, but I think they need to make someone an offer in free agency right now. I don't like just relying only on rookies to potentially fill the void at pass catcher. I think Mason Taylor as a tight end will be better in year 2. I think A.D. Mitchell's better than we realize, and with better quarterback play, we could see him hopefully take a step. But last I checked, is Jawan Jennings not available still, right? Is he not out there? He's only 28. He's still a free agent. I just checked. Last year, 55 catches, 643 yards, 9 touchdowns with the Niners. Year before that, almost had 1,000 receiving yards on 77 catches. I think he's a good player. He's 6'3", 212 pounds. I think he's a good compliment to Garrett and A.D. Mitchell. Wouldn't that signing make some sense from a Jet perspective? That's who I would advocate for. Mougey's very good, seemingly at, hey, your market didn't go the way you thought in free agency. Now the Jets can maybe get a value sign. Like I see Abdul goes Tyreek Hill. I don't want anything to do with Tyreek Hill. 1, I don't think he's healthy. And 2, Tyreek Hill on the Jets, that could be toxic. I have confidence in Mougey, though. I think he'll learn from his mistake of just going into the year last year with no legitimate receiving help. I mean, it was a joke what they started the year with, right? Can we be honest? Like, you want to criticize Mougey for that? And Glenn, they should be criticized for that. Josh Reynolds and Tyler Johnson are the second receivers on the team next to Garrett, please. Oh, but they're going to run the ball, Jake. Yeah, you still need to have some semblance of a passing attack in the modern NFL. And teams just doubled Garrett and made it impossible. He still, by the way, was having a career year before his injury. That's how good he is. They need to add a receiver, no doubt. All right, let's do some calls before we wrap this baby up. Ladies and gentlemen, first up today is the number 1 seed in Asmaniac Madness.
Agora. Good morning, Jake. How are you?
Oh, I love the hat, Kyle. Well done.
Yes. In case I have to step out later for an emergency Guinness and corned beef. So listen, I don't think we can crown Mougey just yet. We can't forget that we did trade up for Malachi Moore and Tyler Barron last year, right? And whether that was, Glenn steering the ship, and maybe we think that, Barron could be a better fit as a rush linebacker in a 3-4, or we think that, that was just the first year of development for Malachi Moore. I think right now we think that Malachi Moore is, a third safety that we traded up for, and Tyler Barron has been a wasted pick. So, I'll be interested to see this draft, and it'll tell us, I think, more about Mougey with, the lessened Glenn influence than last year's draft did. When I was going through all my stuff and I found my green herringbone scally cap, I also found this. I don't know if I got this at one of the meetups. This is a Gryffindor scarf. I don't know if this belongs to Beast. If he wants to provide his address offline, I can send this to him. But it's obviously not mine, and
Este basura, cabrón, güey.
What?
Basura.
I'm just asking.
No, thank you. Pass.
All right. I think you look. He looks good in red and gold. Gryffindor, there's nothing to be ashamed of there.
2 points for Gryffindor.
That's right. That's all I had today, Jake. Looking forward to hearing you on the K Show this afternoon. Let's go, Jets. Let's turn this thing around, Mougey.
Kyle, great call.
It's Jets, Jets. I love Fireman Ed, too.
Hell yeah. Good job by Kyle there. The Key Reynolds says, you lost me when you said Francesa said it. Francesa was just talking about how Arch Manning won't play for the Jets, just like Peyton didn't. So a couple things on that. One, Francesa's comments on, Arch won't play for the Jets. He said in the same podcast yesterday that I played at the beginning of the show that he was giving his opinion on that. He said in the clip that I played at the beginning of the show in regards to Glenn and Mougey and the power dynamics that this was from a source. So two different things, right? The Arch Manning stuff was his opinion. Gary Myers, who knows the Manning family like the back of his hand, has already said Arch will not pull a Peyton, will not pull an Eli. He will play for the Jets if the Jets draft him. He's reporting that. Francesa gave his opinion. He said that yesterday. I trust Gary on this. But again, listen to Mike at the beginning of the clip. He's not giving an opinion here.
I have some information that just came to me because I bumped into someone that I have a high regard for and that I know knows the situation. And I found out a couple of things that I was very surprised by that I'll share with you.
That is reporting. That is not, this is my opinion on the matter. So that's the difference. All right, last chance to get in here. Make sure you vote for Asmaniac Madness. Ladies and gentlemen, the champ is next today. Hit it.
The only thing worse than the New York Jets is cheap-ass shoes and head coach blues. At least we got Mougey and some first-round picks. Jake, my brother, I'm trying to get hype. But this team sucks, and Joe Bonesy needs me to sell new flippers to this fat dumpster fire.
Jake, my brother.
Mr. Bonesy.
Yeah, man. Listen, I am not here to defend Glenn because, you know, I will die on the rock that his decision to bring in Fields over Rodgers was his. And I will also die on the rock for all the people that still don't have the balls to admit that bringing in Justin Fields and not keeping Rodgers combined with Devontae Adams, because people are like, how do you know Devontae Adams would have stayed? Because they're best fucking friends, bro. Devontae was staying. So I don't want to hear that shit, you know, but besides that, I will say a few things. One, I personally don't like how people quote Mike Francesa saying a source, right? If there's one thing we can say that Glenn and Mougey or Glenn has done, I don't know, we really run a tight ship. You haven't seen as many leaks. You haven't seen as many bullshit leaking out. So for him to get this information, I don't know. I don't know how much I believe of it.
Yeah, but you sure nothing's leaked out? Look at the whole Wink Martindale fiasco.
Yeah. I guess you're right about the Wink. I still don't know 100% because Wink didn't really comment too much about it when we saw what Wink said on it. But
also, they fired 9 assistants, 1 left on his own to go take a lateral move. Like, people talk, man. You go 3-14, people talk.
All right, but how about this for sake? How many of these free agents that we've signed were Glenn's guys?
But I think two things could be true, Bonesy. Like, they're making moves to try and help Aaron Glenn, but Darren Mougey might have more power than Aaron Glenn. I have felt that way for months on the show, reading body language, the comment Glenn made how Mougey helped him pick his staff, and then you compare that to what Glenn said about his coaching staff he hired a year ago. Like, it's night and day. You know, he used I. He's not using I anymore. He's using a lot more we, me, and Mougey. Yeah. It sounds different. It kind of backs up how I've felt. Go listen to Mougey at the end of the season presser and then watch Glenn. There's like a notable shift in the dynamics. Rich Cimini also said it. Do you trust his opinion or his reporting? He said that Mougey is no sidekick. Again, I just think you read the tea leaves here. Woody being pissed at the end of the year. Remember that story? I think there's signs to the fact that Mougey has overtaken Glenn in the hierarchy. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Glenn should call the defense, which he is. And Mougey's trying to help him get players where they can maximize his strength as a defensive coach. That's what helped him get the job in the first place. It's not a bad thing. This, to me, is a good thing.
No, listen, I believe some of the reports. I just don't believe that they have a bad relationship.
That I don't know. I didn't comment on it because I don't know.
Shit. I mean, when any player that we've signed, even if you listen to their press conferences, Gino didn't even know Mougey's name. You know, Glenn, he spoke about Glenn. He didn't even know Mougey's name. So Glenn did that negotiating. So no matter what we want to say, Glenn still has at least half of it to do, have to do with it. Like obviously Mougey knows what he's, and again, I was so worried when we got rid of Joe Douglas that we weren't going to find another GM that was the same or comparable because of how bad our past has been with picking GMs. And I've been so delightfully wrong that I love Mougey. His third, and don't forget how hyped we were about Joe Douglas at the beginning, because he was,
of course, and I
he
said
was
that
smashing
already.
trade. I mean, Jamal for 2 firsts. He flipped Chris Herndon for a 4th when we drafted Herndon in the 4th. Cashman couldn't see the field. We got a 6th for him. Darnold was seeing ghosts. We got a 2-4-6. So, the beginning was hot, and then we'll really know, like Omari said, how he does next year and with all these draft compensation and what quarterback he picks, because that's basically what we need. Every team needs to succeed. So I didn't like how they said, oh, they're already not getting along. It's like, man, I don't believe that yet. Last year was a disgraceful year. It was embarrassing for both of them, especially because Glenn is the type of guy who he has to be himself, and being himself is confidence, brashfulness, just fucking just oozing with confidence. And it worked for Rex because Rex started off so hot, and it looked so bad for Glenn because of how disgusting last year was. So I some of the reports are obviously true, because you can tell, just like you said, even watching Mougey talk during the combine, you can tell that he's got a little more weight, and maybe it's more like it's not as like this big illusion that this is all Glenn's thing. It's like now it's like, all right, you guys can tell that I do have some cojones. I know what I'm doing. I can make these trades. So it was a little more confidence by Mougey, which I like too. But I don't know. I just don't like Francesa because he's a Giants fan and a Jets hater. So when he says a source, it's like, man, I don't want to hear source. Give me something. Give me something more than just a source. You talk to a friend who's, I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to say, at least I can say that we know that Glenn is hands-on talking to these free agents, and he's the one negotiating in terms of verbally, while Mougey's doing the big boy stuff behind, initiating the trade. So as much as I'm down on Glenn, I'm big on Frank Reich. I still like the Frank Reich hire. I feel like it's not talked about enough that, like my boy Gypsy hating on Frank Reich. It's like, yo, when Frank Reich was with the Colts, he had 5 different quarterbacks in 5 years, and they were a top 15 offense every year, top 10 a couple of those years. So it's like he knows what he's doing. And the Carolina debacle, obviously he didn't want Bryce Young. He doesn't like short quarterbacks. He got fired mid-season in his first year. So something is behind the scenes there. And I don't even care about what he did at Stanford, because that was an Andrew Luck favor. But I do like, and I see the vision of, if Glenn fails and our offense is top 15, that Frank Reich takes over this team. I do see that, because he's an adult in the room that, has shown at least in the past 5 years or 6 years or so that he can still coach an offense. So I don't want to be out on Frank Reich. And I still, how you were saying, you were just saying how we should have Levis instead of Dalton. I disagree. I'm sick of us playing the hope and delusion of upside.
What does Andy Dalton do, though, Bones? You already have Geno for the same
You know
role.
what he does? God forbid Geno plays well this year and shows some signs of how he was on Seattle, and we're a 3-2, 3-3, 4-4, 4-5, 4-6 team that we're on the cusp of a bubble, and Geno sprains his ankle, and we need a guy to come in for 2 games and keep us in it. That's what Andy Dalton does. When Andy Dalton when Andy Dalton comes in his first game for Bryce Young, he throws for 300 and 2 touchdowns. Like, Andy Dalton is not that bad of a backup guy if you need a game or 2. I'd rather have him than Tyrod. Tyrod's going to get hurt. So I don't know. I'm not as much as playing this delusional upside that we can't even get quarterbacks to come play. They're mediocre, like Rodgers, or, we bring a guy in, he can't even play up to his potential. Like Geno, I'm kind of scared for Geno, because, we don't normally get the best version of these guys. We normally get the worst version. So hopefully Frank Reich can fix that. And I do still have some belief. If we go top 15 defense with Glenn and top 15 offense with Reich and top 20 defense with Glenn, I think Glenn might survive the year. So
they wrote me off. I ain't right back though.
Bonesy, I appreciate it. Again, they never get the best of these quarterbacks. That might be true, but like they've also had horrible coaching, horrible set of circumstances. Like Aaron Rodgers threw 28 touchdowns, your boy. But the kicker cost him how many games? The defense was in shambles. So every year it's unique. I rather take a chance on the upside at backup, but I guess you're right. If they are somehow, 5-3 and Geno suffered an ankle sprain and he's out a couple games, I guess Andy Dalton would give you a better chance to win than a Will Levis would maybe, but I don't even know if that's true. Andy Dalton might be shot. Would you rather Carson Wentz or Will Levis? Like, I guess that's the question. So the Jets, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know who Connor Hughes' sources are, but Connor Hughes of SNY is reporting that Mike Francesa's report is factually incorrect. Now, let me guess the source, as we like to do on the show. I think the Jets gave this information to Connor to try and quell people thinking that Mougey's now in charge. That's my reading the tea leaves here, right? Like, the Jets, of course, are going to deny that, oh, no, it's business as usual. But I don't believe this. I think Mougey does have more sway than he had. I don't think he is a sidekick. Now, what I can't say definitively is that Darren Mougey is in charge of the team over Glenn now. That, I don't know. Do I think they're on an equal playing ground at the bare minimum? Yes. I think that Mougey is not a sidekick. Rich Cimini has said that. So is Connor Hughes saying that's also not true? Right? Rich Cimini reported on my show, Mougey's not a sidekick. He said that. So what I want to know is Connor saying that Glenn is still superior to Mougey, that, Mougey's still a sidekick, like what the owner said at the introductory presser? But I'm not surprised the Jets, if it is the Jets telling Connor this is not true, are denying it. This doesn't surprise me at all. And I do think, again, if Mougey has more of a say, he should. He's earned that. I think he's done a better job. Ralphie rocks in the raffle for 2. Thank you, Ralphie. No shocker here, but as of right now, I think Minka and Malachi should be the starting safeties. Cisco showed me very little last year. I think Malachi should have to compete for a job with Belton to be the starting safety. Dane Belton, I believe, should get a chance to compete for a starting role with Malachi Moore. That's what I believe. Common Country checks in. He's in the raffle for 2.
Good job.
Bold prediction, Ty Simpson goes to the Cardinals at 3. Their quarterback room is Brissett and Minshew. Perfect for a rookie QB. I would be flabbergasted if Ty went number 3, Common Country. But you did caveat by saying bold prediction. So we will see if you end up being right. Appreciate your super chat. You're in the raffle for 2. Last chance to vote. But this is a runaway. Mad Max is dominating. 71-29 in the opening round.
If Mad Max ain't yapping about Jets, that boy, he's jamming. He's slamming, freaking dancing, wall smashing. I'm Jake Asman. If Mad Max ain't ever stopped yapping, that boy, he still be dancing. Then call Jake Asman. He got an orange wall.
What's up, Asmaniacs? How you guys doing today? So, great, good. Thank you to all the Asmaniacs who voted for me. This is a good way to get more people to even vote for me. The Aaron Blood also dance. And let me throw some punches. Is James B on the line?
No.
Come on, James B is losing badly. 71-29, but we'll get way more votes in. Come on, we'll get so many more votes.
Mad Max, you're dominating here. Are you confident in the next round now?
Super confident, unless James B comes back, but there's no way he's coming back. In March Madness, there's always a probable comeback, like Kansas versus North Carolina.
You versus Australian Jet fan, who I see is on the line. This is going to be the battle. Australian Jet fan, are you ready for your next opponent?
I am so ready. I'm so ready, in fact.
So ready. This is going to be the Aaron Let's host to dance.
In fact, I might have to start doing a bit of dancing myself if I'm going to compete. But I will be saving it for later.
Let's see who do you think's going to win this next matchup?
Hold on. I don't know what's
How
happening.
do you feel about beating Philly duels yesterday? He was going to be my biggest competition, you know. But you upset him. Thunder Beast, how do you feel about getting eliminated by Lee Nee?
Shut the fuck up, asshole. You're a little troll anyway. You look like a bag of dog shit anyway on my back part.
Honestly, Beast, we all knew Lee Nee was going to upset you. She's more popular caller than you.
Fuck you. Get lost. You want to go do something?
Beast, are you just thinking you're bad all day, Beast? Honestly, are you even thinking you're bad?
You want to do something, go hump a tree.
I've probably done more today than you've done all day, Beast, honestly.
Hump a tree. Or better yet, go hump a snake while you're at it.
Beast, you're just jealous. Stop dominating 71% to 29% as Maniac Madness. You're just jealous, Beast. You're just jealous. You're just jealous, Beast, honestly. Beast, you're just jealous.
Asmaniac Madness is underway. Make sure you vote to make your voice heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, unbelievable. Congrats to Mad Max. Let's close out voting. Mad Max is your winner this morning. Mad Max is advancing to the round of 32 against Australian Jet fan. Final score 71-29. The 3 seed Mad Max taking down the 14 seed James B. 436 total votes were cast. Great performance by Mad Max. Now we get to the afternoon show. We're coming up later today. The 7 versus 10 matchup features the Lupman Luppy against Johnny Boy. That will tip off this afternoon on our second show. I got to run, though. Big thank you to everyone who tuned in. We'll do our raffle for the signed Vinny T jersey during our second stream. I got radio to attend to. I'm on the radio today from 1 to 3. I'll discuss the Jets Connor Hughes report in response to the Mike Francesa report that Connor is saying is not true. So we'll get more into that then. I'll be back this afternoon. I want to thank everyone who tuned into the show. You guys are the absolute best. Couldn't do it without you. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Consider joining my Patreon. If you haven't, that's where it's at. You get bonus coverage, access to the Discord, your name added to the open of the show, and it's a great way to support what we have going on here for just $6 a month, and it's even cheaper if you sign up for the year. I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. JETS, 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 Jets.
Just listening to a band called Pig Destroyer. Movers all that the behind. So waiting to die. Little do they know. There are your choice supplies. La Puerta Negra.
Oh, hi. Jake wants me to ask you to click on the like button.
That's right, Lane. And if they don't subscribe to the Jake Asman Show, this team may never win another game. Let's go, Jets.